because he was the chair at the time, didn't realize that Gardner doesn't count. Seriously.
Oh yeah, that's awesome. That's what I need.
Oh, right.
Oh, you're gonna do another. How much are you gonna change?
Exactly, yeah. 35 moves to higher.
Right. Right.
He's been in office since 2000. I need to ask him what's the state.
Yeah, the shared person. Right. We have,
I have not finished my daily diet.
good morning, how are you? John reminded me yesterday.
It's not heavy. Just don't want to jam and cream and you want to get size one.
This year, huh? Should I squeeze this?
Let's see if I can find another table so you can have water on it. Or, I'm going to get a name tag.
Cram them in a little more, I guess.
No, they're not. Post office. Yeah, that's good.
Right. No, you can't.
No doubt.
How are you doing?
Doing pretty well. We ran out of mics. We had a lot more people to show up this time, so
Yeah.
thank you for
Okay. Well, I want to share a bill.
And they all
Are you here?
I know it is. It's a small room. You guys are going to be friendly. We do another table? Okay, so we have that round one, but it would match.
Looks like we're out of mics, so the two will have to share.
Oh, can you misspell?
Hey, Brian. One more question. What is your district number?
set on it?
You guys are gonna have to fight over the third one.
Oh, right.
So we got
That's more than enough.
That's enough. Okay.
Not like for everything.
Well, if you need extra people, if they're like, hey, you know, but if not, that's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Are you looking for new ideas?
15th is what I have on my calendar.
Okay, you'll figure it out. You didn't know me 2 years ago.
And I have a six. Yeah. That was just recreational, I think.
Okay, and I know you have a bias because of math, okay? But as a general teacher, how much education would you give about children? I have one more that's not a child. Crowd.
Oh, it could be that, yeah. Oh. My wife wants to.
That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. Right.
Morning. We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you so much for being here on your Saturday morning, and an extra big thank you to our senators and representatives for being here on their Saturday morning too. And they've been at work all week, and then they come here and do some more work with us. So thank you to them. And then I just want to get started with a couple of ground rules or housekeeping. Please write your questions on note cards. Don't shut them out. I'll read them out. We usually get more than we can answer in a time, but we have follow-up sheets on your chair. So if your question doesn't get answered or you want more information, the onus is on you. Follow up with them. They would love to hear from you, I'm sure. And then also, if you could please write legibly on your cards, that really, really helps me. And if you could have one question per card, I bought like 1,000 cards. We have plenty of cards. If you need another card to ask a question, just write it on a separate one. And that helps me keep track of the questions that I've asked already. And then the form of a question too. If you don't write a question, I don't know how to ask your question. So those are the things that will help me. And it really is about helping me today. So let's also, I'd like to set the tone of civility too. 93% of Americans agree that we have a civility problem. We don't agree on very much, at least not to that degree, but we agree on that. And we also agree that mutual respect is the path forward to solving that problem. So I would like today's event to be an example of mutual respect for everyone in the room. So with that, we are going to do introductions. I'm going to give 3 minutes to each legislator, and then we're just going to move down the line this way, if that's okay with everyone, unless somebody really is itching to go first. So.
Is this on? Yep. Okay, you can hear me? Yep. And it's coming through the speakers? Yes. I don't know. All right, anyway. Good morning. Welcome to Saturday, and welcome to the 43rd District. This is my home district. I did drive over here, but there was really no good reason to do so. The weather's fine. I could have walked easily. However, I'm Representative Bill Sutton, the House representative for the 43rd District, and happy to be here. I serve on a number of committees now. It's kind of growing. Serve on appropriations. I do chair the House Insurance Committee. Work at the also on elections, commerce and labor, and then we get into some of the specialized standing committees with the CanCare Oversight Committee, the Healthcare Commission, and the newly formed Government Oversight Committee, and we'll probably talk about that at some point. But I'm happy to be here. I've been in the legislature. This is my 13th year. So I'm starting to learn the ropes a little bit. We're getting a little better at it. So I'm glad that you're here. I'm glad that I'm here. And I'll pass it on to Cindy.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Senator Cindy Holscher. Thank you all for being here. Some people have asked, like, wait a minute, is this your district or you're just outside the area? Well, I'm one of the senators that's south of 435 that, when you look at your libraries, and I'm so thrilled that the libraries always host us. We've got a lot of libraries up north and then not as many down south. So I always try to come to the southern area, which are close to my district. But the fact of the matter is I serve the Overland Park area, which, guess what? A number of citizens from Gardner make that commute every day, going to work in some of the businesses that are there. So I have that whole swath along 435 and then go as far as 135th through that whole area. So a very robust area in terms, again, of all the businesses, the hospitals, Johnson County Community College, where we see a lot of people from this area traveling to do business as well as work. I serve on several different committees: public health, the new government efficiency committee, as well as utilities and ways and means. And guess what? We have approximately 3 weeks left in this very condensed session this year. So a lot of activity going on. I know many of you are engaged and, watch the process. This is the time to still keep engaged because, like I said, we have roughly 3 weeks left where some very critical major decisions will be made. Additionally, I serve on a couple of other subcommittees, kind of like Bill was talking about. Sorry, Representative Sutton. We go way back. Yeah. So I actually started in the House serving 2 sessions there. Then in 2020, ran in Senate. So I am what they call in the Senate, I'm house trained is the nice phrase that they use for it when you've crossed over. But yeah, I do serve on a couple of subcommittees, and during the interim, child welfare oversight is one of those where, we really do take a fine-tooth comb looking at some of the things going on in terms of DCF and the foster care system. So very, very busy time. Please stay engaged. Again, this is just a very, very critical time. I appreciate y'all being here. You've got one, never mind.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Senator Doug Shane, and I represent Senate District 37, which includes here in Gardner. My wife and our 4 kids, we actually live down in Lewisburg, so the Senate District includes not exactly, but the easiest way to try to describe it is the northern tier of Miami County and southwestern Johnson County. So the communities of Gardner, Edgerton, and then southwestern Olathe as well. This is my first term. It's been a real honor and privilege to be a part of the process and see some of the beauty in the tradition and the culture of the Senate. To work alongside both Republicans and Democrats and see how we're working together to try to bring about good legislation this session. I serve on the Education Committee, on the Government Efficiency Committee, the Judiciary Committee, as well as the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. So it's been a real pleasure to be part of those, and was recently appointed to serve on the Attorney General's Advisory Board for Human Sex Trafficking. So I'll also be participating in those efforts for our states. So thank you everybody for being here this morning. I look forward to participating.
Good morning. My name is John Resman, and I represent the 121st District, which is basically K7, K10, and then 143rd, 151st, and 159th, all the way to county line. So it's mostly rural. It used to run north and south, now it runs east and west. I serve on federal and state affairs. I want much anything. That doesn't include the Panasonic plant, thank goodness. I don't, that's somebody else's headache. I serve on federal and state affairs, corrections and juvenile justice, which I'm the vice chair of, and transportation and public safety. So I get the policy end for law, and then how are we going to pay for it? There's a bill I want to talk about later on that involves juveniles that we finally made it to the floor, and we're going to hear it Tuesday, which is extremely important for at least 10% of these kids that we're having problems with. But I'm really glad to be here and look forward to your questions.
Hello, my name is Robin Essex. I did not RSVP, my apologies. They're rushing at the last minute. I told these guys, hey, this is the date, show up, and then I didn't RSVP, so that's my fault. Robin Essex, I represent District 78, which some of you might know as the former Speaker's District, Ron Reichman, and the boundaries changed a little bit. So if you picture Garmin in Olathe, you go north to 143rd, and then all the way down to Black Bob East, down to 167th, so I touch a Spring Hill School District, and then you kind of wind your way back up to Garmin. So that is my district, and I currently serve on the committees, local government. I serve on water, which has been very interesting this year. I'm the vice chair of transportation, which a lot of transportation issues are coming up in Johnson County, and I'm thrilled to be a part of that conversation. And taxation, what an interesting, and it meets at 3:30. So by then, you know, we're pretty spent, but I'll tell you, we've got some amazing tax bills coming out, and I think that our listening to knocking on doors and understanding property tax and Social Security tax and some of those burdens that are weighing people down, we are listening, and instead of this local governments, you will do what we say, we're forming a partnership and trying to make sure that the laws that we create don't harm local government, but also keep them accountable, because we all have to work together to keep taxes low. I don't know. I can still talk. All right. So there's a couple of bills that I've been pushing because they're very special to me. My husband is a teacher in the Blue Valley School District, and I know Capers 3 has been a complaint for teacher retention and recruitment. And so Capers 3 is something that we have examined in length that I really appreciate this session. My bill actually would roll Capers 3 teachers into Capers 2. Hopefully that will help with, we're over 1,000 teachers short in the state of Kansas is last that I've heard. So it's a problem, and we need to do what we can to draw the right teachers, highly qualified teachers here, and keep them here. So that is something that I've been working on. I don't know if my bill will get anywhere. I would say not this year for sure, but there are other ideas to make Capers 3 better. I'll just leave it at that. Several ideas that we're examining. The other issue, I live in Olathe, and fentanyl is taking our kids. Fentanyl is taking our kids across the state. And my husband used to teach drug education in the schools, and then it got passed on to counselors, and it got passed on to SROs, and then nobody had time to do it. So there's some schools that have drug education an hour for all 4 years that you're in high school, or maybe 1 hour in the 3 years you're in middle school. My push is to bring, how many of you went through DARE? Do you guys remember DARE? And you know, there's mixed opinions on whether it worked or not, but I will share with you that the new updated DARE has a a strong emphasis on fentanyl, and I'm hoping to get that in our schools. Thanks.
Okay. We've got a couple of questions about housing and property tax. So what is the legislature doing to provide property tax relief? I know we touched on it a little bit.
Well, I can get the ball rolling, I guess. I don't know if somebody else wants to jump in. You want to do it? Go ahead. Who's going?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Does this work? I just took a different mic. Is it working? Yeah. Okay. So the new tax bill that we just heard about is very interesting. I don't know if you guys paid close attention. I'm sure you did because you're all voters and you're here and this matters to you. But you heard a lot about something called LAVTR, which is the ad valorem tax fund that the state used to fund to help lower property taxes at the lower level. Sorry if that is confusing people, but a lot of people were saying, bring it back. You're not funding it. You're not helping local governments lower it. Well, the problem was that fund had no teeth. So it wasn't lowering property taxes, and cities and counties were just spending it. And so we listened, and this new tax plan that we have kind of brings it back. It's called ASTRA, A-S-T-R-A fund. Please don't ask me what all those words mean. It's a good acronym. It's like LAVTR. And right now the goal is, in the year of cuts, $60 million that we're putting in that fund. And every July 15th, we're going to send out to cities and counties exactly what their budget plus inflation plus a factor on top of that minus new growth. So there's a calculation there. This is the number we want you to stay at or below to get a part of this ASTRA $60 million. And if you're not a part of that and you do increase your taxes, and go over your budgeting, then we have a protest petition option. So that protest petition is 10% of voters that voted in the last presidential election. And that petition, once it got to that 10% level, would absolutely shut down the budget. So cities and counties would be forced to start over. So there's the teeth, right? And so we're wanting to make sure that we are working together, giving cities and counties with these big projects, you know, that flexibility, but also sending a message, we've got to keep taxes lower. So that's the property tax piece. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Can I still go? All right. Okay, no.
That's all right, Robin. I'll pick up the ball now. But that was actually that bill was passed out of the House yesterday, so I think it's on its way to the Senate now. I don't believe that was already Senate approved, was it? Okay. All right. So that'll be on its way to the Senate now. We'll see what comes out of it. I think it's certainly a well thought out response to the nightmare that was LAVTR. That was not a good program. I think this is a better program. I have hope for it anyway. I think, but that's only one side of the issue. There's a second side that most of you have probably dealt with, and that's your property assessment values. And those numbers are coming out. Probably maybe you've already received them. If not, you will be very, very soon. Many times a budget is determined by, they determine the budget, and then the assessment values are calculated from the budget. And that's what the first bill that Robin described as trying to stop. However, there's one other aspect, and that is that, and this is going to require a constitutional amendment. So you're going to be involved in this if we get it through, both sides of the building, and that is that we change the calculation on how property assessments are designed, and that includes a 6-year rolling average, so that we can eliminate spikes up or down, but they never go down. So it'll eliminate the spikes up, and then at the same time, it also will. Well, you're going to have to vote on this one. Like I said, it's a constitutional amendment. We got it passed strongly on the House, strong bipartisan support. I think it's a good amendment, but that's going to be up to you if we get it. If we get it through your side, then you'll get to vote on whether or not you want us to change the assessment calculation process.
Yeah, I'll just mention, I'm not on tax, Doug isn't on tax either, but at this point, we haven't seen a whole lot of bills in the Senate come to the floor in terms of property taxes yet. I mean, it is something that has to be tackled, it has to be addressed, but I will caution you that, some of the bills that, have kind of been running through the process squeeze the balloon. And, and when I'm saying squeeze the balloon, that basically, we as a legislature impose upon, well, now you on the local level can't do this in terms of taxation, which then forces the local level to tax in other forms. And, kind of to what Robin was saying, we need a partnership with the local level, not those type of adversarial roles where, we make a change that makes us look good, but then has very negative impact on the local level. So like I said, I'm going to be keeping my eyes open to the proposals that come our way to make sure that we're making appropriate moves, not just something that does that squeezing the balloon.
One thing that hasn't been, is this on? One of the things that we haven't talked about yet is that the Senate also had a constitutional amendment proposal, and I'd say this is a source of a bit of a rivalry or a feud between the chambers, is that the Senate's proposal that passed out would put a 3% cap on an increase in the taxable valuation of your home, as opposed to a rolling average. So there's a difference there. I'm not quite sure exactly, which proposal might make it over the line to wind up on a ballot, but that was that's what the Senate did, was to propose that. I'll say we're aware now of the House bill that will be coming our way. I think the Senate, the view we'll take on it, I think there's some good things. I do think there's concern because I believe the bill would eliminate the current revenue neutral rate process that was instituted over the last few years. And there are certainly a number of us in the Senate that would like to see those efforts at greater transparency of pending tax increases remain in place. So I think we'll talk through that. We'll have a look at it, but certainly I would anticipate that the Senate will have a look at that bill and work it.
Well, I don't serve on tax, so but I do like the amendment and the bill, and I did vote for both of them, and I think our bill is better than yours, and I think ours will make it all the way to the governor. So.
What is your opinion on providing affordable housing, rents, and ownership in Johnson County? Do you support providing discounts for local government employees such as school staff, EMT, police? Repeat it. What is your opinion on providing affordable housing, rents, and ownership in Johnson County? Do you support providing discounts for local government employees such as school staff, EMT, police?
I'll just jump in. We have a few programs out there that have been maybe not kept up with, that we could probably do a better job of revisiting. And then we have some things that are for rural areas. And, I often say, well, wait a minute, if this is a program that's good for the rural area, should we maybe take a look here as far as, the suburban area? Because affordable housing is a problem all across the state, no matter where we are. I do feel like we've made some progress in the area in terms of, there used to be a lot of pushback with, apartment buildings being built in certain areas. I think a lot of Johnson County has come to the realization that we've got to have housing in some shape or form. So I feel like we've made progress there. Part of the problem is, though, unfortunately, a lot of the apartments that are being built still are very unaffordable. So that seems to be the next hurdle that we have to cross. We've gotten progress, that we've got more acceptability in terms of different forms of housing, but now we've got to get to the part where it's like I said, we have to make progress on the fact that it needs to be more affordable, because otherwise we have people who monthly are spending the amount that they could be spending on a mortgage, but housing just isn't available. So I do hope that we see some of those programs come forward that have been talked about. It seems like I said, that we might have some availability to take a look at what's being done in other parts of the state that could be beneficial here.
Yeah, and one program that we just kind of reduced rather dramatically was the affordable housing tax credit. Now, that sounds like, oh my gosh, you guys don't care about housing, but that's absolutely not the case. This was a program that was well intentioned. You know, a lot of our stuff is well intentioned, but then when we see the results, it's not exactly what we had planned. The single greatest driver for economic impact and economic growth, as far as housing is concerned, is single family dwellings. That's where you get your bang for your buck economically. What our low income housing tax credit was doing was bringing in out of state contractors to build apartment complexes throughout the state. And as the senator just mentioned, that's not solving your problem. All right. First off, the apartments are unaffordable. Only 40% had to be available for low income to begin with under that legislation, and so this was not driving the economic growth that we were looking for. In fact, when you have apartment complexes, and obviously there's certainly a role for those, but those are generally transitionary. Instead, these complexes are charging to a point that you can't save to buy a home. You're stuck in a rental situation, and that's not what we had envisioned. It's what we created. So we took a step back on that one, and we're putting a lot of effort into designing a program that will help with single-family construction, and that's really where we're going to get the impact.
Okay, I just want to take a little bit of different approach. You know, talking about apartments, I also want to talk about houses. And you take a look at, like in Overland Park, if you looked at the zoning laws and the requirements to build a home, it drives the price of homes up. Now they're talking about a tariff on lumber coming from Canada. That drives up the prices. I've talked to builders that won't build a home if they can't make any money. And homes just a mile and a half from my 3-bedroom ranch, which is nothing compared to what they're building up there north of us, start at $800,000. Now, I don't know if a teacher or anybody else. I spent 30 years with the Johnson County Sheriff's Office. I couldn't afford an $800,000 home. And right across the street from there, there's another development going in where every house is $1.2 million, and that's the starting price. So that's what they're building. Part of the problem is that the builders won't build because they're not making any money, and zoning. And then we have property taxes, 6% or 7% on a loan. You know, there are things that we can't control, but we're trying to. And until we can convince builders or bring down the price of or change zoning laws, the price of houses are really just going to be unaffordable in Johnson County. You know, I see a house go in my neighborhood and went up for sale, and it was $525,000, which is about $200,000 more than my home. The second they put the for sale sign on there, the sold sign went on it. Somebody already bought it. And then they're also buying homes to rent, which is making the prices of homes go up. And also, you're spending $3,000 a month to rent a home. You know, so you're never going to get out of this problem that we have if we don't tackle it on a lot of different fronts.
Well, I'll just add to that. Just a quick thing about going back to local governments having the freedom to do what they need to do. I know homelessness is kind of lumped in with affordable housing too. It's an issue that keeps increasing in our county and our area. And we here at the state level, we need to cut taxes from local governments, but you're also responsible for affordable housing and for homelessness situations. So we need to be careful, again, how we put restrictions on local governments. But I will share, I also sit on the Olathe City Council, and I get a lot of emails when we have Habitat for Humanity, a wonderful organization that just built a neighborhood of 15 homes. And I'm going to use it. Have you heard the term NIMBY? Not in my backyard. So it's really happening a lot in Olathe. These homes are beautiful. They're brand new. They're uniform. And everybody that gets into these homes gets background checked. And there was an uproar, like an organized uproar of, we don't want that. We have 1 acre lots. This doesn't look right, in my neighborhood. And HUD housing and apartments. People automatically think, oh, these apartments are going to bring crime. They're going to bring bad people. And you know what? It doesn't belong in the middle of a subdivision. Well, I will tell you, I do agree there are places for apartments. And a lot of times, maybe closer to highways so they can access transportation or whatever issues those are. But that does get back to zoning and city planning and making sure you're putting them in the right place and not just smack in the middle of a of a subdivision. So basically what I'm saying is this is public-private partnership. Government does not have all the answers. We definitely don't have all the money to just subsidize everything and, anything over $1,000, let us take care of it, or the federal government. It's got to be all of us working together. We cannot put that burden on just governments, because guess who's going to pay for it? All of you guys, taxes will go up. So just a perspective that I wanted to share. Great organizations out there that are doing amazing things with affordable housing. We need to be good with it. Sorry.
We have quite a few questions also about education coming in. So the budget has only $10 million for special education costs. For Olathe, we will end up with a $36 million in annual shortfall. What are your plans to address this inadequate funding to ensure schools have the resources and support they need?
I'll go ahead and tackle this since I sit on the Senate Education Committee. So just so we're clear, it's not that the state is only providing $10 million. That's an additional increase. So the state is providing over $600 million, and it was a 13.8% increase from last year. One of the challenges with special education is that there is supposed to be a federal contribution component, which the federal side has not lived up to their end of the bargain for many, many, many years. And so that's the source of a lot of the shortfall. So we have a state target of 92% of excess costs associated with special education. That remains the target. But we on the state, we also are constrained by our resources and what we can actually afford to put in. So we're going to increase base education funding $200 million this year, which aligns with inflation. We're obligated to do that. We're increasing special education to over $600 million. So the state is making those increases. We're putting more and more money in. And the governor and the Supreme Court agree that we're fully funding our public schools. But we are in a very challenging position with special education in particular because the federal government, who kind of created a lot of the rules and created a lot of the programs, has now kind of backed out of those. And that's been for a long time. That hasn't just happened, in the last 6 months. This has been year over year over year. So just to make sure we understand, over $600 million in special education.
Thank you. Let's be very clear. We have been in a pretty massive rebuilding stage the past 8+ years, in terms of the fact that we were on block grants for a while and severely underfunding our schools. And it has been a priority over these past few years to basically build that back up. So we are now, yes, we are fully funding. We're at that acceptable range on gen ed, but you got to realize there's a second bucket. So you've got the general ed part, but then you also have the special ed part. So again, the focus has been over the past years getting that gen ed into the acceptable range. But to the point that Doug was making, we are mandated to fund special ed. So we're at this bottom-ish level in the acceptable range. So what that means every year, then your local districts, because we are mandated, and we should do it. We should fund special ed. It's important. We have made so many advances over the past 20, 30 years in terms of ensuring that we are educating everybody. So what happens is money has to be taken from the gen ed budget and put over here. And that hurts everybody all the way around when we don't fully fund special ed. So yes, while it's true, we've been raising, levels to some degree, we're still not where we need to be overall. Got gen ed where it needs to be, but we got to tackle with this part. And, keep your eye on the ball here in these final weeks, because, there's going to be emphasis on tax cuts and doing other things. And we have to be very, very meticulous and very detailed in how we do that, because, we've got to fund education. It's the most important thing we do. It's what brings people to our state and to Johnson County. So, like I said, we have to be very, very, very diligent in what we're doing here in these final weeks to ensure that we aren't using funny math, and we've seen some of that in the past where different calculations are talked about, which end up robbing our schools. So please stay active, please stay engaged, and watch what's going on these final weeks.
With the movement of the Federal Department of Education to Kansas, what is the legislature doing to anticipate, I can't read this word, so I apologize, the responsibility, especially in regards to special education? What agency should I be watching as the return to the state moves forward?
Everybody's like, sure, Senator Shane, why don't you tackle that? That's right. So it's very difficult to operate in the world of what you don't know. So I think we need to have that as a base reality of there's some things that we have to kind of wait and see. When it comes to schools, a lot of the federal money that comes into schools does not come through the Department of Education. It's coming through USDA and other programs because the number one source of federal funds is obviously for our foods programs, right? A lot of the programs, this is my understanding of what's happening in Washington, D.C., so bear with me, right? This is not Kansas policy, but what our current understanding is that a lot of the programs, especially like the special education and some of the grant programs, if the Department of Education gets shut down, so remember there's an if component, and then how long it takes, because it can't happen overnight, that those programs would be rehoused in other agencies. So this isn't something that's going to happen overnight. If the Department of Education loses budget to go to conferences and have workforce there in Washington, D.C., and so on and so forth, that doesn't necessarily impact us. So we need to wait and see a little bit. It's not going to happen quickly. It's not going to happen overnight. But we anticipate that where there are funds that are currently coming in to support local public schools, that those funds will continue, unless, of course, we hear otherwise. And that we're not expecting huge disruptions when it comes to the funding side, certainly in this year.
I'll jump in. I think it's a huge concern in the respect that this dismantling means that, again, some of those critical services may not receive the attention or the funding that they have seen before. And the biggest issue around it is that while we're being told it's potentially being dismantled, nothing has been said about where that money's going. So, like I said, that's the biggest concern, that then we're going to be told in the state level, oh, yes, this part is dismantled, it's coming to the state level, which maybe sounds good that, oh, great, we'll have more control, but we're probably not getting that money. And we are already every year in a battle to get our funding to adequate. Sometimes somebody asked me one time, they're like, if there's one thing you could change about the legislature, what would it be? And I said, hold on. I said, hold on. There's a lot of things. But I tell you what, it would be that aspect that, I've been there. This is my 9th session now. Every year we have to fight so hard just to get minimal funding. And it just feels like a big discourtesy to our children at times. And just the fact that that is the economic engine of this area. So I'm not saying it shouldn't be without scrutiny. Oh my God, we scrutinize education and we scrutinize education spending from a dozen different directions. So like I said, there should be scrutiny, but my gosh, the fight we have to engage in every year just to meet the minimal standards, it's exhausting. So like I said, we need to stay on top of this as far as what happens on the federal level. Oh, sorry.
Oh, no, you're fine. Again, I'm okay, this is going to be a little strange. I want you to all brace yourself here a little bit, but I'm actually in agreement with the senators on this. But the main thing is that we don't know what's coming, and so the headline of dismantling the Department of Education, sure, that's a shockwave, no doubt about it. But I don't know what that looks like. I would anticipate, this is just completely off the top of my head, I would anticipate that the funding that currently flows, might still flow, might not, through the Federal Department of Education will probably come to the states in the form of block grants. And that's great. I've got no problem with that. That'll create very little difficulty from a state level concern. The issue is then, however, will the federal government continue that promise? Now we have a question. Are they going to continue those block grants? We've already heard about SPED funding. certainly not maintaining their promise on that. We've got discussions about Kansas is backfilling the federal government rather effectively, but we still have work to do on that. Will the Department of Education turn into the same sort of morass? Maybe. I don't know. And we can't really react to anything until it actually happens, and we know what we're really dealing with, not just a headline.
Oh, you know what? I forgot something. To the point that's for me, keep in mind there are more guardrails on the federal level. So I think Doug may have said, it might take some time, while they've announced this dismantling, that might actually take some time to happen because, again, there are more guardrails on the federal level. So we'll see how swiftly this is moving. I mean, obviously, it seems like things are going pretty fast in some of that regard. But the reason I mention that is because there are fewer guardrails on the state level. So that's why it is so important to keep your eye on the state level in terms of, what is happening there, because decisions can get made pretty quick without, again, some of those guardrails that are placed on the federal level. So I know everybody loves to watch what's happening on the national level and everything, but man, this is where it's happening is what I try to get people to understand. This is the part that affects your day-to-day life, your roads, your schools, your taxes. Like I said, this is where we need your focus.
With possible cuts to Medicaid at the federal level, how does the state plan to meet the healthcare needs of our most vulnerable?
Well, I don't serve on health either, so I only get to vote on things when they hit the floor. So unless you want to talk about corrections or their budget or juvenile justice or stuff like that, that I'm your guy. But we provide a pretty good service for the most needy in Kansas, and we spend, I don't know the amount of money, but we spend a tremendous amount of money. And we've increased the number of, from the wait list from the IDD this year. We added another 320 people off that list, 500 last year. And it all depends on what we can really afford. And we're working towards eliminating that list, which hasn't been touched for years, if I'm speaking right. It's just now all of a sudden, the last 2 years, we finally have done something about it. But, at the federal level, and I think it was in the summer, they introduced a bill that would lower ACA rates, some of them down to zero, so there's another option. But as far as Medicaid, we're providing a very valuable service to the most needy, and that's who really should receive it. But like I said, if somebody else has something, I don't serve on health, so I'm kind of winging it up here.
Well, it's not exactly a great fit for me either, but I do serve on appropriations, and we kind of touch on some of this stuff a little bit in insurance. So when the FMAP is reduced, that's the federal medical assistance percentage, the discussion is that the FMAP is going to be reduced. It's currently floats right around 50%. So the federal government provides about 50% of our Medicaid funding. It's a match. If we don't pony up our part, they don't pony up their part. But if that percentage is reduced, that's going to be huge. I mean, that's going to be a cataclysmic, probably, from a budgetary standpoint. What's that going to do? I don't know. We've been making progress, like John mentioned. The waiting list a couple years ago was, particularly for IDD waiver, was I think 11 years. All right, that's nuts. All right, that's Medicaid not doing what it's designed to do right there. I think with some extra funding that we threw in there and some other rules and regs roadmap or guardrails there put on there, we've gotten it all the way down to 7 years. Well, supposedly it will. Supposedly what we're doing will cut it down to 7. That's what our projections are. So that's still not good enough, and I'll admit to that. If FMAP is cut, that's going to be even more challenging. So the answer is, let's see what happens. It's, again, one of those, here's the headline. How do you react to it? Let me see the details. Let me see what actually happens, how this fiscally affects us. But it would be big. It would be definitely a challenge for us because the pool of money is not infinite. We can spend it, in fact, actually, we spend almost all of it. We spend over half of it on education. So the second place is in social services. Okay, I'll stop now.
Yeah, I would add that I don't know that I've heard communications as far as cuts in the sense of true cuts to Medicaid and Medicare. What is happening is trying to get people off the program that it's fraud and abuse. And we should all champion and cherish that because it helps protect the most vulnerable among us who really, really need the programs. Our Medicaid Inspector General in Kansas has prevented $300 million in Medicaid fraud in his tenure. So it is an important conversation, and as long as that's what we're talking about, I think we should all be able to help support those efforts. To Representative Sutton's points, if we're talking about changes to the match or other things, then those are much different conversations. So we'll have to see where the national dialogue goes and where the president goes with his policies. But we do sit in the position we have to be a bit reactionary because we can only react to what ends up becoming true. We can't react to something that is not or has not happened.
Oh, go ahead, Rob.
Okay. I just want to add real quick. I know CanCare and Medicaid is a priority for all of us here. And the people that it was initially designed for are the people we want to continue protecting. And that wait list is unacceptable. And I will share with you, we have tackled it the last 2 years. I sat on a plane next to somebody that worked in Johnson County, where when we took 500 people off the IDD wait list, she said, "That's great, but oh my word, we weren't ready." And so service providers weren't able to take them all in immediately. We were sending out these forms to people to sign up for it, but we couldn't quite keep up with the pace. So what we're trying to do is balance that. And this year we had 320, is that the right number? 320 more that we took off the IDD wait list. We all think that that's terrible, that the wait list is that long. We want services to be available. So as we grow that, we grow the amount of people we take off the list, we need to make sure our service providers can keep up as well, because a wait list, getting off the wait list to be put on another wait list doesn't help either. So I will also share with you that my son is a physician, and we did increase reimbursement rates. And that, I don't know if that was brought up, but we are doing what we can as far as CanCare and what we have control over. And, more doctors, if we have better reimbursement rates, hopefully more providers will be service providers to our Medicaid patients. So we're tackling it a little bit at a time. We're always open to what your thoughts are on that. And we do care. So we want to make sure we protect that in Kansas.
I'm going to add a little asterisk to the Medicaid Inspector General because it's been mentioned 300 million, and I serve on public health. Sorry, John, I didn't realize you didn't, so I threw him out there to answer a question. I serve on public health, and like I said, at this point, it's identified potential. So we haven't really recovered these numbers. It's just suspected that there might be fraud there. So like I said, there's a lot of work in regard to, is this actual fraud or just anecdotal type? And we've heard some of that. But, the thing I want to talk about here is the fact that we do everything we can to avoid Medicaid expansion, it feels like. And I mean, when we talk about the fact that, okay, there's special ed, on the federal level and the funds we've gotten there, and now, we hate that we're going to miss those funds. But oh my gosh, the funds we have missed out on from the federal level, from not expanding Medicaid, we would not be in this concerning of a position with those billions of dollars that we have forfeited, because we're paying for it and it's going somewhere else and it's not coming here. So I'm concerned. Yeah, I'm very concerned about what I'm seeing on the federal level. And the fact of the matter is 80% of the people support Medicaid expansion. We are one of, 10 states now that haven't expanded. All the others that haven't been going back. Granted, a lot of unforeseen things happening on the federal level, but what we have missed out on by not doing that. And so, like I said, yeah, it's a huge concern from where we are, because we don't have some of those things in place that other states do at this point. So, yeah, again, keep your focus on the state level. So many decisions are going to be made there. Obviously, federal level is important too. And I will mention too, like I said, I serve on public health. It is one of the committees I have served on in the House as well as the Senate. We've been stuck in 2020. this whole time. We're still doing bills that are dealing with COVID and not. So I hope things are better in the House in terms of the focus, because like I said, sadly, a lot of the bills we're working and hearing in the Senate have been COVID focused, and we're 5 years out. So I want to, we need to be future oriented in terms of serving our people.
Some cost of living questions. Multiple sources confirm that 1% of the U.S. population owns 40% of the U.S. wealth, and this percentage is increasing. In real terms, people working for wages have not seen their income increase since the 70s. Philosophically, do you find this acceptable? What can you do about it? One question. Do you need me to repeat it again? Okay. Multiple sources confirm that 1% of the U.S. population owns 40% of the U.S. wealth, and this percentage is increasing. In real terms, people working for wages have not seen their income increase since the 70s. Philosophically, do you find this acceptable? What can you do about it?
That is something that we have talked about for a very long time about. I'm assuming we're talking minimum wage is the conversation here. Okay. So income that comes in. I will share with you the last information that I heard is that employers are desperately looking for employees, that we have a lot of positions that are not filling in let's say our fast food, hospitality, hotels. Understaffing is something that when I go to a restaurant, I see one waitress working the entire restaurant, and I ask what's going on, and they're like, we just can't get people in. And so I know the competitive piece of that is we have to stay competitive if you're an employer to bring the right people in. And I know that income can be better, but I know that they are fighting for the same pool of employees, and I know income has increased in that area. I will also share, when we have Walmarts and Burger Kings, and I'm sorry, I do go to McDonald's, it's probably not good for me, and all there is kiosks, right? We, in places where minimum wage did go up pretty high, then where are the workers? Well, they can't afford to have them, or those prices go down to the person who's, the customer. So it's we've got to find the balance of how to work that through, because if you go up to $15, but you lose your job or you lose hours, that's not doing what we want it to do. So going to a kiosk or checking out yourself at Walmart, the part of that is because the demands on minimum wage have not worked with the demands of that business. I don't have the best answer for that, and I'm willing to talk and have a conversation about that as well. But it is something we need to tackle, and I'm open to what you guys think. So.
I'm a Taco Bell girl, just for the record. So you shouldn't have to work 2 and 3 jobs to get by. So philosophically, yes, I have a huge issue with kind of the way things are at this point. And I would tell you, I think there's a bill coming this week. I can't remember which committee, but I believe there's a bill that's that basically would say that local entities cannot pass bills to adjust minimum wage. That's an issue because, one, I don't think the state level should be encroaching on the local level. And you know what? Johnson County is a lot different than Western Kansas in terms of some of the needs. So it makes me nervous when we encroach upon the local level, and we have people in those positions for a reason. But additionally, it's just one more thing, like, okay, are we never going to deal with this issue of wages that are not livable? It gets very frustrating at times too, because I know this week I was in one committee and there was funding taken away from financial aid in this for college level students for our institutions. And one of the senators said, well, kids got to have skin in the game. And, they've got to be working and doing these things. I worked a job and went on and graduated without any debt. Okay, yeah. I will say that I put myself through college working and had scholarships. Could not happen now. I would not be able to do that based upon the wages, based upon the cost of college. So some of that hearkening as far as, how it was done before just is not the reality now. So we have to address it. Either we're going to do a better job of funding higher institutions, or we're going to have to address the wages, or maybe it's both. Because, like I said, we have some issues there, and we know people working 2 and 3 jobs, then that takes away from time with your families, going to church, those other things you want to do.
I'll stay out of all the federal issues related to this, focus on the state. I think that one of the things that some of the things we can do at the state is we need to stop viewing lobbyists as being folks that take money from people without lobbyists and transfer it to people that have lobbyists. We've got to stop picking winners and losers in Topeka when it comes to our economy. We need uniform tax reform. We sit in what I would describe as an immoral state of taxation in Kansas. I think our tax burden for our citizens is too high. And of course, we couple that with what's happening on the spending side. We really need to make sure that we're in a free enterprise friendly environment in Kansas. Now, from a regulatory side, we're not nearly as bad as some other states, but we could do better. And to make sure that we can actually practice free enterprise, pure capitalism, as opposed to crony capitalism, which then only goes to benefit a few. And those are the things that we can do at the local level. That helps supply high-paying jobs, helps provide better industries, and gets Topeka out of the business of picking winners and losers in the long term. That's where I'd really like to see us go. I think that's what would be really good for Senate District 37 as well, being one of the fastest growing areas of our state. So those are the things I think that we can realistically do, is to create that environment, that business and working environment that really works to the benefit of all people instead of just a few.
I'd probably chime in support of that last statement there. This is a little bit more of a complicated question than just minimum wage. Because what we're actually talking about is the cost of goods as it relates to income. And so there's 2 sides of this equation. And we can artificially increase wages, but if it also at the same proportion increases your cost of goods, what has that done? Exactly. It's, there's more money. Oh, wait, that's inflationary. But I'm not going to get into that part. But there's more money involved, but you're in exactly the same situation that you were in before. So now we have to worry about, yes, wages. We wanted to bring oh, sorry. I'm going to slack over here. Yeah. No, we want to increase wages. Yeah, absolutely. But we do that by increasing the economic output of our state. And that's where you're actually going, again, bang for your buck. That's where you're actually going to see results that matter to your pocketbook, not just increasing your rent and increasing your food costs and increasing the cost of every goods and service that you buy throughout the entire state. How do we do that? And that's I would echo the senator on this one. We need to get out of the way in a lot of cases for our industries to grow, so that we can employ more people, and so they can be fighting for employees and driving up those wages. That's exactly how you drive wages up. Is you get, when the demand is higher than the supply, wages go up. The demand for workers is higher than the supply of workers. That's how you drive wages up. And that's the way to do it without artificially inflating the cost of goods and services throughout the state.
I just want to just point something out, is that, I think sometimes it's market driven. I can remember seeing a sign at 167th and Lone Elm for a FedEx, for people to come work at FedEx, that started at $22 an hour. That's 3 times the minimum wage. That's how desperate they are for employees. And I'm sure UPS is probably paying the same amount of money, if not more, to draw people from there. You take a look at the Panasonic plant. Starting wage, when we passed a bill, they estimated was going to be $50,000 a year. Whether it's that or not, but that's going to be a starting wage. If we can bring companies in like that could pay high quality wages, that's those things that we can do, and let businesses do the free market as far as how valuable an employee is, to bring them on board and pay them an adequate wage. So I think the market drives a lot of what somebody gets paid.
We still got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to try and squeeze in one more question. But it's kind of a doozy, so I was going to try and limit you to a minute. But could you please describe the foster care problem in Kansas and real solutions to address it? So I'm going to still let you have the full 2 minutes.
Okay, I'm glad that question came up. I've been waiting for the past hour. Corrections in juvenile justice. Here we go. In 2016, we passed Senate Bill 367, and I don't know if you may have voted for it, Bill. You were probably there. And well, it was in 16. And what it did, it overhauled the juvenile justice system, and it it kind of limited the number of kids that were going to be placed in juvenile detention. And what it does, it's supposed to steer them away from being criminal activity into treatment and therapy. Well, for 90% of the kids, it's working. For the other 10%, it has been a disaster. And I've been on corrections and juvenile justice for 7 years. And for 7 years, we have tried to change 367, which was treated, which I hate to say, is the holy grail for for juveniles. Well, this year we finally have a bill, and what it does, it will give judges more authority not to place kids in foster care, because that's what's happening right now. We have juvenile offenders that are winding up in the foster care system, and we've heard horror stories about the treatment that foster parents have received and social workers. We had one social worker come in and told us that she got into an argument, and then she was attacked by a juvenile that was going to spend the night in their office, which we all know should not be happening. Well, she locked herself in her office, and then the kid went on a terror raise, and he just destroyed her office, or I should say an office down the hall. Well, what happened is the police came, they arrested him, they processed him at the police station, and what did they do? Because of the law right now, they brought him right back to where he was causing the problems. And they had to wait 2 days to get a warrant to get him out of that situation. This bill, which hopefully will sail through the House, well, we'll find out Tuesday, and the Senate, will prevent these kids from winding up in foster care in these social services offices, because it's a huge problem. And I said I hope it passes, because we've been working on it for quite some time.
I'll jump in there too. I mean, we've had some good progress in that area, and I'm thankful to John and others who have drawn focus to the foster care system. Our numbers of kids in foster care has improved and gone down. The issue of kids sleeping in offices, that has decreased dramatically. I mean, we still have a ways to go. Oh, yeah. Yeah. But, I mean, we have been moving in the right direction because of some good legislation that has made it through the body. You know, I will say there was this kind of, kind of a debate, I guess, initially when I first got into the House. There was a very, very big effort then to say that foster kids had to be placed with family members. And that seemed to be a lot of emphasis initially. And, you know what? That hasn't always been the best situation. Sometimes the family members are the problem. So I'm happy to say we've kind of moved away to, okay, yeah, if there's family members that are, competent, qualified, okay, let's try to find family members. But in some instances, it's not going to be a family member that is the safest or best place for a child. So we have introduced the SOUL program and some other programs to help ensure that we are putting kids with, acceptable people. Doesn't have to necessarily always be a family member.
Anyone else? Okay, we're at time. So thank you so much to our legislators for being here on their Saturday morning. Thank you to you. I think we still have coffee and donuts. I can't see out there, but.
Are you willing to stay and answer the remaining questions?
No.
Thank you, Cindy. I appreciate that.
Yeah, the program's over, but you are welcome to speak with the legislators if they are available. So, thank you.